Hey boys and girls, this is Don, the Great Southern Brain Fart. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Blowin' Wind with the Great Southern Brain Fart podcast. This podcast has been an absolute blast for me, and I hope you all have been enjoying it as well. Do you have a favorite episode? Do you have a favorite couple of episodes? Hell, do you love them all? The best way you can let me know is by leaving a comment or a review over at iTunes or on whatever platform you are listening to the podcast on. I'd really love to hear from you. Be sure to check out the website at www.brainfartinterviews.com and check in with me. This is something I really want to see grow, and I want this to become your podcast as much as it is mine. So thanks again for all your support. Thanks again for listening, and please spread the word. Hey there, boys and girls, and welcome to episode 20 of Blowin' Wind with the Great Southern Brain Fart. This episode's going to be quite a surprise for y'all because it's not a heavy metal episode. It's not a hard rock episode. It's not even a psychedelic rock episode. But today, we're going to be talking to what I consider to be a modern jazz icon. 22 years ago, a friend of mine came running into my workplace and said, "Don, I heard your new favorite band at the 99X radio station." She handed me an autographed poster and a CD by a band called Once Blue. I had to work that night, so I missed their performance at Smith's Old Bar, and to this day, it's one of the biggest regrets of my life. Before there was the multi-platinum selling Norah Jones, there was a collaborative jazz act out of New York City called Once Blue. Once Blue featured the singer-songwriter duo of Jessie Harris and Rebecca Martin. The band released one album and toured with everyone from Squeeze to Emmylou Harris. After the split of Once Blue, Rebecca went on to release 6 amazing solo albums and an album with the jazz trio Tillery, which featured Becca Stevens, now of David Crosby's band. Rebecca has stayed alive and vibrant in the jazz world, and this year she announced the release of a live Once Blue performance from 1996 at the Handlebar in South Carolina. I'm really psyched to have Rebecca Martin right here on Blowin' Wind with the Great Southern Brain Fart so that we can talk about this and whatever the hell she else wants to talk about.
I speak and you speak. I move, can move. A long time ago, petticoat, hair button, shoes. You turn up on a Sunday.
Rebecca Martin, welcome to my show called Blowin' Wind with the Great Southern Brain Fart.
Thank you, Don. Great to be with you.
So you are the first non-hard rock metal person that I've had on the podcast, and this is a really exciting thing for me because most people that know me know that I have a very broad palette of taste when it comes to music, and I have a long standing history with Once Blue, being a fan for many years. And,
well, thank you.
And of course, Once Blue is one of the greatest regrets of my life because I never got to see you live. And so with this live album,
this new recording is going to be something that you'll enjoy then, for sure.
Well,
and that's why I put it out, because we were busy in the 1990s, and people were filming to some degree, but not to the extent that, or they were recording too. There were lots of people who might record concerts to have a document of the bands that they loved. But today, of course, everybody's filming something, or rather on their phones or what have you. And, it's a little problematic, but at the same time, it's nice to have documentation. And myself being such a history buff, I do appreciate historical documents. And we were working on a part of our home, and I came across a box of old bats and found this live performance of Once Blue, which, for those who are not familiar with it, it's a group that I was a part of, and maybe some of your listeners maybe most of them aren't familiar with my work. I don't know, but it was a band that I was in with Jesse Harris. He and I were the principals of Once Blue, and he's another singer-songwriter. And at the time, it was a great time in New York City with a lot of the young, great jazz musicians that we all have come to love today are of a very specific generation, with Kurt Rosenwinkel, Kenny Wollesen, and Ben Street. Though on the recording, we were accompanied by a drummer named Bill Dobrow.
Mm-hmm.
So it was nice to find, and it was a really special performance at the Handlebar down in the Carolinas that we all just are so fond of. We still, all of us remember it. So when I was putting this together and talking to everyone who was, in the band at the time, we all recall it, and we reached out to the record store, who still had the poster from 1996.
That's amazing.
I know. So
Wow.
It was really meant to be. It was meant to come out, and the poster it has been incorporated into the artwork, of the physical CD. So it's there, and it's just really great to have. So I hope that you and everyone who decides to give it a whirl will enjoy it.
Well, it's so funny that you said what you were talking about, like about how people might not be familiar with your work or whatever. It's I grew up being a heavy metal fan for many, many years, but I also grew up in a very musical home. Like I grew up in a place where, like, my dad would spin an Iron Butterfly album, but then he would turn around and put on John Coltrane, and then he would put on Crosby, Stills and Nash, but then he would put on, like Lovin' Spoonful, So like by the time I got to be a teenager, even though I was very well versed in heavy metal and hard rock music and stuff, it wasn't unusual for me to really open my ears to certain bands. And when Once Blue came out, if I remember correctly, around 95, 96, am I getting that about
That's
pretty
right.
close? Yeah.
It came out in October of 1995.
Yeah. So see, that was kind of when, at that point in my life, I had kind of shifted, heavy metal music had shifted currents. I kind of ventured off and was listening for new things. I got into jam bands, The Dead, Fish, bands like that. And those bands in particular really broadened my palette. And then I found myself head over heels with this local bossa nova band called Cicada Sings. And so I really kind of found myself delving into this. So when I heard Once Blue, I just remembered thinking, like, this is amazing. These are young people my age that are playing this kind of music. So like I was always curious, what was it that swayed you into that kind of direction when most of your peers were, wearing flannel and, screaming and playing loud guitars and stuff. And yet you guys were really kind of embodying this essence of not really a too modern of a jazz, but it was jazz that was accessible to a younger generation, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I think that one of the things you're talking about, in my opinion, is you're talking about how you're open to music and you're open to the things that move you, and it doesn't mean that you or anyone else needs to be stuck in a single genre, right, of music. And what's authentic and what feels genuine, can appear in everything, in anything. It doesn't mean it's only in jazz or in heavy metal or in rap, but it's across the board. It exists. I mean, I'm that sort of a listener. I don't really I move a lot towards instrumental music,
Mm-hmm.
but I really love the power of great improvisation. But I'll listen to anything. I check out everything that I can. I have sort of a voracious desire to hear something that hits me as an authentic expression, or visual too, or a strategy in, like I work in water protection. For me, it's all the same. It's just, looking for those things that resonate and that resonate typically with us, with the public. So, I'm a songwriter, and I grew up in Maine, and I spent all my time outside, as a kid, up in trees and in rivers. And I think that, there was a certain, I was very driven and really wanted to make music, and knew that I wanted to do it in New York City. No idea really why. And from rural Maine, no one left. So I was really just sure I was going to go, and I made my way from Maine to New York, and it was a crazy path that led me to eventually the Bronx, and to work at MTV Networks, and to support myself in production. Sorry, I have a beep there. But
it's all right.
But, I think there was a sense of spaciousness in me, even though I was driven. It's sort of both things existed, of knowing and being clear and pointed, and also having a larger capacity for space for interpretation, and for poetry, and for harmony. And I've always been attracted to great melodies, which is something that I'm not rather drawn to songs that are monotonous, there's many tunes that are beautiful, that are simple melodically, but I really like challenging melodies to sing. It's fun, and it always helped me to be a more specific kind of singer, in thinking about sound and intonation. So that was sort of my inclination. And, in a roundabout way, as life sort of goes, I ended up meeting Jessie Harris in New York City. And he brought me right into this jazz scene that and prior to that, I had been thrust into the pop thing, where I had a big manager who would send me around to write songs with big pop writers, and I did it. But I really wasn't, I felt like I was hitting my head on the ceiling. Like, I didn't feel like I was really getting to what it was I wanted to get to, even though at that age I was very young. I was 22, 21, and I just didn't know yet what it was that I was seeking. Of course, as we don't. So Jessie opened my pointed me in this great direction, and his songwriting, and the two of us together at the time, that was it. I got on my path. So it wasn't as though I was rejecting grunge or anything else that was happening at the time. I was just on the path and searching for, driven by this idea that I didn't know what it was, but I knew I would know when I hit it. And I did, and the music that we made, I think, was an embodiment of our, we didn't have these ideas in mind, such as song structure, or, we were playing in little clubs in Manhattan. We were so thrilled to be making this music, because we knew that we were right in the center of our creative pulse. Like, we were right in it. And the musicians were so great that they had the capacity to pull out more of the harmonic qualities of the song, which gave us more of a palette. And then we really became a tight band, which I think was appealing to people who were, really song fans, or folk fans, or pop fans. It really it was super creative, and it had a very open vastness to it. But they were songs, so they were 2 or 3 minutes long, and it was something you could actually wrap your mind around. And it wasn't unique. I mean, let's face it, there's Joni Mitchell did it with jazz musicians and songs, et cetera, et cetera. People still do it. But I think at the time we were in New York, it was just like the start of a new cycle. And I think we, without trying or knowing, we started a kind of a new cycle with this concept. And we were unique beings, and, you know, as we all are, and happened to be in New York City at the same time. So it was just all fortuitous, I will say, for myself and my creativity.
I just think it's funny because, like, listening back to the Once Blue album today, which is, it still blows my mind that like, to me, I still think everything was 10 years ago. You know what I mean? Like,
I know.
I'm 44 now, and my wife and I will be together 21 years, you know, this year. And I keep thinking, like, but like, I still think everything was like 10 years ago for some reason. And so when I was like, I actually had to get a calculator out and calculate how long ago
That's
this
the
album
nature
was.
of it.
And I could
relate.
And I was like, wow. I mean, like, you know, but I remember thinking at the time when hearing Once Blue, and even listening to it now, is that it holds up just as good, if not better, than it did when it first came out. Because, you know, in some ways, I feel like you kind of undersell yourself here a little bit, because what I did think was so unique about it was because it's almost like Once Blue to me was kind of a gateway drug to to jazz. Do you know what I mean? Because you know, if you give somebody a Love Supreme to listen to that's never heard jazz before, they're probably going to run out of the room screaming and never want to hear another jazz record. You know, but like,
and I think that's, yes, I understand, and that makes me so happy, because what you're describing too is what we should always be striving for, which is when we fall in love with something, where did it come from? What is in its past? What is it that the musicians that you're hearing that are bringing you closer to something, listen to, and are inspired by, and that journey back, it can be really powerful. And so, you know, it doesn't surprise me simply because of the musicians that we were playing with. We're just so, you know, they're jazz musicians, even though it's a broad term, but they would be, you know, they would be categorized as such. And we're coming just out of that world, just getting out of school, and we're so creative and such dedicated musicians to the craft and to the history of jazz that it was all there. So it's implied. And as I said, I think that the accessibility of the music, being these songs, they're 3 or 4 minutes long, it kind of has everything. It has, you know, things, I mean, I think everything that we kind of crave in good music, you know, with their good choruses and bridges and solos and hooky musical segments, you know, it made it, maybe that's what it was. So no, I don't undersell it. Honestly, I just, you know, it's a big world out there, and I think being a part of music that inspires people, or anything at all that can help to improve someone's life or change someone's life, it's bigger than just a genre, isn't it? It's a communication tool, and it's a way that we can relate our humanness to one another and find our people. That's the bottom line.
No, it really is, because, you know, I was raised. Nobody in my family were musicians. I'm pretty much the first musician that I know of in my lineage that I can think of. But like I said, again, kind of growing up in a very musical family and hearing music, I think one of the things that resonated with me so much with Once Blue was, especially because at that time I was so drawn in by just the obscurity of bands, like Fish and Blues Traveler and God Street Wine, who was another great New York City band. Things like that where, and God Street Wine, more so than any of them, was one of those bands that kind of took that experimental jazz approach and mixed it with the kind of jam band rock thing. But when I heard Once Blue, I just remembered thinking I can, it's like a warm blanket. I can go to sleep with this. I can't tell you how many nights I went to sleep with that album playing. You know what I mean? Where it was just it really was. And it's a strong memory and it's a strong connection. And of course, I think it was when you and I talked for the first time a while ago. It's been over 10 years. There was I think it was either, what was it, a re-release, or it was a European release that was finally put out that had all those bonus tracks?
It was the second record that never, Once Blue, I think everybody kind of expected it at the time, which is, in the business, the business entities, they put a lot of money into the group to try to, break the band. And back in that day, that's how it was done,
Mm-hmm.
It's still done that way a little bit, but it's not, that was really, the DIY route was not as popular as it is now, or as necessary. But, it was more of you work really hard, you put yourself out there, and then you get recognized, or you get discovered. That was more of the time period, as I recall. So when we were discovered by David Segerson of EMI,
mm-hmm.
there was a lot of excitement and enthusiasm and money that was invested in the group. And so, I just lost my train of thought. I was just going back into memory lane.
I love when that happens.
I know. What was it? What was the exact question? Where was it? We were talking about. Your. Help me out here.
Okay, I'm trying to.
Talking about Fish, God Street Wine.
Oh, yeah, and then we were talking about how you guys kind of were like. Okay, now I'm lost because I was so into what you were saying. I kind of forgot what I said.
It's the dreaminess of storytelling.
It really truly is. It really truly is.
You were talking about going to sleep at night, listening to the record, talking about, whatever it is. That was a nice thought process because it sort of encompasses.
Oh, we were talking about the expanded version. That's what it was. About how it was a second album. Yes. Okay. Bam. Got it.
We actually recorded a whole second record in anticipation for a second release.
Right.
While we were touring and doing that, and I think everybody just kind of expected the band to continue and to do well, etc. But, we had some internal problems and with the band, which, made it a little challenging. We kept going, but then EMI went bankrupt. And so and they dropped everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And we had finished the record, but without a label, we couldn't put it out. And that was the beginning of all the merging of major labels.
Right.
EMI was the first. So that was the beginning of the end of the record business as we knew it, really. So we had this unreleased record. And years later, Jesse found, in the same way that I found this one, he found that and was listening with Kurt. And they were like, this is great. We got to put this out. And they contacted me, and they had an opportunity in Japan. So they released both records together, the first and the second. So there was something like 25 or 26 songs.
Yeah. It's like the longest. It's like the greatest, longest debut ever.
Yeah. So that was really, I'm very happy to get all the music out. So make it available, rather. So that was wonderful for that to see the light of day, because there's a lot of great music on that second record, and that was with Jeff Ballard on drums that time.
Oh, okay.
Kurt and Ben were the same, and Jesse and I. And I think we might have, I have to go back, I don't remember. There might have been a couple of guests, but maybe not. Maybe this was just the basic tracks of the second record.
It's too funny because I think it was around, oh my gosh, let me see. I'm trying to think. Maybe it was around 2004 or so, maybe 2005. I can't remember. But I saw the Black Crowes in Raleigh because I was living in North Carolina at the time. My wife was in grad school, and Bill was the drummer for the Black Crowes for a short time.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I remember that. Bill's been, really involved in all kinds of interesting, I don't even know what he's doing now. I mean, I talked to Bill recently, but I'm not sure who. He was playing with Sean Lennon for a while, and, these guys they're, it was really exciting, now that I can look back, and I knew it was then. Just to be surrounded by such energetic, committed, like I said, musicians, you knew that, everybody was willing to jump into anything that was creative and fun. And New York City, you're surrounded by lots of different opportunities. So, everybody has gone on to do so well in their musical collaborations. It's pretty cool. It
was just so funny because I actually got to meet Bill after that show, and while most people were like all kind of clamoring around trying to meet Chris and Rich Robinson, like I walked up to Bill and I was like, "You were in Once Blue," and he looks at me and he goes, "Who are you? Do I know you?" Like he just and he just let out this huge laugh, and I was just like, "No, seriously," I said, "I'm a huge Once Blue fan," and I said, "I didn't put two and two together," and I was like, "But there can't be too many Bill Dobros or whatever, and he was just like, "God," he goes, "I never get pinned for being the drummer for Once Blue."
I know, never. Not to mention, he really was
fantastic drummer, though. I mean,
yeah,
fantastic drummer.
We toured with him a bunch, and we did record the single, the "Save Me" single that ended up being the video.
Right.
Was Bill. But besides that, the drummers on our recordings were, either Kenny Wollesen or Jeff Ballard.
Mm-hmm. Well, so once Blue, after Once Blue, kind of, like you said, just kind of fell apart. Things happened. I mean, obviously, you have had a very extensive, life in jazz. I hope my number's right. You have 6 solo albums.
It's something like that.
Yeah, because I'd like to think I have them all because I have bought just about every one of them that you have, from Middle Hope through all the way through Twain.
The most recent one was Twain, right? That was solo, but I've done 2 other collaborative projects since then too.
And you did Tillery also, which had Becca Stevens, who's in now David Crosby's band, which which is, I mean, so
that's what I mean. It's really something to see, and with Gretchen Parlato, who is just a beautiful musician,
amazing.
As well, and recently with Guillermo Klein, who's the Argentinian composer, and he and I collaborated on original music, which was really fun because his lyrics are in Spanish, and although I don't speak Spanish, which is a regret, what I was able to do is phonically write English lyrics, listening to the sound of the words and writing a completely different meaning to the song. If you laid my lyrics on top of his, the sound of the words on top of his, they'd be identical, pretty close, just in terms of beats and what have you, but it's in English, so it's not even a translation. It's just the sort of the flip side of, it was a fun experiment. The sound of his lyrics became the English lyrics of the tunes that I sang on that record.
That is a fascinating thing, because for me, being a songwriter myself, like, I mean, and a lyricist, like, so for you basically just kind of took the words that he was singing and kind of came up with your own interpretation of what was being sung?
Yeah, it was, so if he said, gracias, right?
Yeah.
I would listen to that word and, or phrase of Spanish sounds, and I would use the sound of that to craft a lyric, so that, like I said, if you laid them on top of one another, they would sound the same, but they have totally different meanings. There's no relationship within the meaning. It's just that the sound is the same. And that's the way I'm very visual, and I'm very, my senses are the things that I really rely on in every way. I'm that kind of a person that processes information that way best. So it sounds like a fun, silly concept, but it was really not initially a concept. It's what occurred to me, because and his melodies are so deep and fun. They're melancholy, and they're heavy. There's a heaviness to it, and I'm drawn to it. So that's how I was able to sing them, because I couldn't have sang the Spanish lyric. And you can interpret, or you can interpret the meaning, but if you've ever done that, where you've taken a language and you've interpreted it into another language,
mm-hmm.
the meanings never are the same. It's actually not. Like, one time I worked with a Japanese singer. Her name was Miwa Yoshida. She's in this band called Dreams Come True, and they were the largest pop band in Asia. And she came to New York and set up shop at Electric Ladyland for months and months and months. And the goal was to take the songs in Japanese and take the translation in English and turn them into songs that made sense for an English listening audience. And it was so challenging, because the poetry, the Japanese poetry, it just doesn't work. We don't use those sayings like they do. Like, we have our own sayings that don't really translate in other languages.
Right.
Things that we understand, but another culture may not. They'd be like, don't let the door hit you on the way out, or something like
right.
that.
Yeah.
We would take that literally in another country, whereas in America we know what that means. So there's a lot of that happens that makes it very difficult to stand behind and sing. So instead of going through that process, I just decided to listen to the sounds and write lyrics based on that, which is very much what I do with my lyric writing. With melodies, when I find a progression on guitar and a melody comes, I'm just making sounds anyway. It's kind of just jumbled, just a lot of sounds that become words. So in a sense, I was using Guillermo's, this language that I didn't understand, as the sounds that mimicked what I do when I write lyrics. So it was like that too. So it was very natural.
So that's really cool, because basically it's like you were taking whatever it was that he had written, or like what you were listening to lyrically, and interpreting it as if you, like you said, like if they were just notes on the guitar or chords, and
just the melody.
You were just putting words to it. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, your own
that might
writing.
Be my favorite collaboration to date.
Oh, really? Really?
Yeah.
I can see
record
that
I'm most
because I
proud
can
of.
see the challenge in that, you know. But like when it comes
the
to
music is just so great. I just love his writing so much, and it's like Kurt Rosenwinkel. These are Brad Meldau. These are musicians whose music moves me to places that's so unique. I mean, I am so moved by it that what comes from it is my favorite, because it's like I don't know, the stuff I was writing around Guillermo's tunes was not stuff I could have ever gotten to with my own. I mean, it was weird, strange stories about prostitution, you know, about train crashes. Just really, it sounds sinister, dark, but it wasn't. It was showing a side of life, another side of life, and imagining another side of life that my tunes just would never have inspired. So it's just so mysterious, you know.
Well, so like when writing your own material, because obviously, like I've got my own, you know, favorite Rebecca Martin songs. "Just a Boy" was one of my. It's probably my top 3 favorite songs that you've done, because something about that song just musically.
Which one? I'm sorry.
"Just a Boy."
Thank you.
From
my son.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And so see, something about that song though, just like lyrically, musically, everything just kind of resonated. So when it comes to writing a song, say like just that, like I know you kind of touched on it a little bit. Does the music and the melody generally come first for you, and then you build the lyrics upon that?
Yeah, I would say that's just the way it's always been. That's the way I write. I don't feel like I need to change it, because to me, the hardest part of being a good songwriter for me, and the kind of songs that I love, has to do with clarity in the world, and in yourself, and in your work, and in your choices, and that to me that's the hardest part, because when there's a clear channel, what I can capture is the best of what I can do. So I don't have to be tricky or clever. I don't need to carry a dictionary around, or, you know, and I don't mind that style of writing, but it's not a natural form of writing. I'm not one of those kinds of songwriters. I'm not trying to say something that's going to become the world's political anthem, or that's just not the way I work. I'm really more of a poet, quietly chipping away in my room. And as I've gotten older, I've really pulled away from. I don't mind being public. I mean, it's fine, but I'm not. I really am just so. I've always been very intimate, but as I get older, I really care more about developing and working through, you know, the things that I need to work through, and to have my body be totally present. And that to me is way harder than writing, you know, rhymes. Than rhyming sentences. So that's been my focus, you know, more than changing up the way I write, because I have questioned it. I've wondered what would happen if I mixed it up. But you know, I'm a Taurus. I'm a fixed sign. There are just some things that, you know, I like rice and beans, and I write my songs the same. And
you know, it's so funny that you said that, because as a songwriter, that's kind of how I am, and that's very much like almost kind of a folk type of approach too, in a sense, because, you know, I mean, not to harken back to Once Blue too much, but obviously you don't mind talking. Is that you know being I was a solo folk singer songwriter for probably 20 years, where I just did solo shows, played by myself or whatever, and you know, now I'm gifted with this incredibly talented trio that I've been playing with for 5 years, and still do the folk music thing. But whenever I hear like whenever I hear the like those songs, my first thing is like there's a folk essence to it. Do you know what I mean? Where like,
well, it's great because I feel very much like, you know, if we have to talk about genres again, I think of it only in terms of finding people
right,
who might be interested in the music, and I don't really care where they are. I just want to find them. I really just genuinely, my true love in music is live performance. You know, and I never have understood how it was that the jazz world would embrace my music, but not the folk world. It's a funny thing, really. And so I've never questioned it. I just kind of go wherever I'm asked to go. But it's always been funny. And when I have done some folk things, my sense about, I don't know, I think that, and I can't really speak to this in great depth, but I think people's understanding of music has really, because of these terms that we attach to music, what people think is folk really isn't, you know, or maybe that's not fair because jazz continues to grow and evolve. But I just mean, what I mean by that is when I think about American music, right, blues being the essence of jazz essentially, or field hollers, or when I think about folk music and I think about the Carter family, or I'm trying to harken back to another time where there's a different understanding, where the music is coming out of something.
Right.
And I think we all are doing that to a degree, but it's an interesting time because we're exposed to so much that I think the music is somewhat in a funny place. It's not coming out of a culture at this point. It's just, I don't know how to encapsulate the thought, really. But you and I right now at any time can listen to music from all over the world. You know, I can't say that I had that access 25 years ago, right?
Oh, yeah, neither one of us did. Yeah, exactly.
Right. We really had to go somewhere and live it in order to experience it. Like New York City, and what you're hearing back at During One's Blue was really coming out of a very specific thing, a scene. You know, people who had to travel to get there and then invest time and energy to absorb what it was that they were living in. And today it's like, it's confusing because people are filming every step they take, and I feel like the music is coming out of a whole other medium. I'm not sure about the communal part of it so much as what it was back. And I feel like a grandma saying that at this point.
Oh, are you kidding? I tell people all the time, I feel like an old curmudgeon half the time because, you know, because the thing is...
when you can say 25 years ago when you were an adult, you know, it's really powerful. But I guess to wrap that up, that's just a brainstorm. I feel like I'm not being super clear, and I bet what I'm saying could be confusing. But what I mean is that... you know, circling back to what you were saying about you love heavy metal and jazz and folk and jam bands, and, you know, when we get too comfortable with this idea of what music is, like, oh, I just love folk, or I just like jazz, or I hate jazz, or I, you know, hate folk, or whatever, we're really not allowing music to just be and grow and to change. And I think some of my experiences with jazz, too, you know, the audiences have such a strong sense of what they think it is that anything that goes outside of those boundaries can be rejected. And that's the end game of my thought processes. I've had that experience more often with folk than with anything.
And I think that's a totally perfect like way to, you actually encapsulated that very well, because
it took me a minute. I got there.
Well, but as someone who, like myself, who was exposed to so many different, I mean, like when I was younger and I was first getting into heavy metal, it was like, it was heavy metal, and then it was heavy metal and thrash metal, and then it was heavy metal and thrash metal and death metal, and then it was speed metal, and good God, now again, here we go again with the 25 years later, there's like 30 genres of heavy metal music, and I'm going, like at what point was there a necessity to divide everything up and to put a tag on it? Because to me,
well, you know why.
Oh, of course I know why, because
it's just marketing.
It's marketing, and it's music industry's way. I remember a friend of mine told me one time, said you can take the crappiest alternative band and create a genre for them, and they'll be the best of that genre. You know what I mean? And so it was like, but like, I'm around people like this sometimes. Like I'm around metalheads who are just like, total meathead, metal or die. But then at the same time, I'm around these kind of folk people who are folk purists and who look at me and what my band plays and goes, "You're not
and
folk music."
This is. I don't want to just pick on folk, because this. I mean, there's the jazz community has that too. It's what it is. It's probably a very natural occurrence, like with everything else, is things, whatever it was that you heard that you fell in love with and that you attach yourself to. And as someone who makes music where people really, no matter what I do, in my career, if you came to me because of Once Blue, chances are that's what you're going to hold fast to. You might like the other stuff, but it was the experience that you had, the emotional connection that you had with that music. And I think that's beautiful. And I think that's I don't think anybody doesn't, I think we all have that story. And so it makes it easy to understand why some people just hold on to a time period like a hairdo, where you see people 20 years later with the same damn hairdo. Or at the Journey concert, that, they're still experiencing their high school. It's just human nature, and I think that the industry capitalizes on that. That's it. The challenge is, as I said, is like being able to change and to work with change and to accept change and to embrace it, for lack of a better way of saying, that is the work. That's the work, and everything is a reflection of that work. So how you grow and develop and change, and you can also have different ideas than you did 5 minutes ago. I mean, you've got to be willing. You don't have to be, but the goal is, I think, is to be able to protect those things that are precious to you, but to also accept that things are constantly in motion. And even aging is a really great example of this. And when we get to this time period, I think our 40s and 50s are really kind of the golden age. You
are not lying. I've just told a friend of mine, I said, my 40s have been some of my favorite years,
it's sort of the platform. It's the 20s and 30s are, for me, were really challenging, but important. And now I'm at a point where I'm about to be 50, next year, and I feel like my 40s, the things that I've been doing in my 40s are kind of setting me up for the next couple of decades, if I'm lucky enough to have that. But, it's like all of these things that, just aging and how we age and acceptance and, death or your mortality. These are the challenges of life. Everything flows from that place. And I think circling back to Once Blue, We were so in the moment. We were so present. We were not thinking about anything but what we were doing. It was coming through in the music, and I think that's why it holds up too. It was so embodied by just the beauty of the moment and where we were living. And that's the lesson. I think for me, I have that as part of my history, and I happen to really believe that experience really hooked me up, because I've made music that way for, the last 25 years. And no matter who hears it, it's totally my own self-expression that I'm happy to contribute to the world.
See, I love that. Which, by the way, I have really enjoyed this. This has been so great to talk to you again.
Thank you, Don. Me too. I feel like you're an old friend, and I sensed you were surprised that I don't know, that I recognized you, or you were apologetic for the platform name, and I'm like, what is he talking about? Don, I've known who we go way back. I'm always, aware when records go out or announcements go out that you have one, and we see you on the list, and I think you transferred, I don't know. Anyway, you're someone who any musician would appreciate, that you love music the way you do, and you are a beautiful musician, and you stay the course. So I appreciate that.
I need to hire you as my PR person, seriously. Like, you should write that for
Oh, well.
But matter of fact, I still proudly have my autographed Once Blue poster that my friend brought to me that says, Don, sorry we missed you. Hope to see you soon, Rebecca.
That's great.
Which I'm hoping will happen sooner than later. But like, again, so to kind of, once again, kind of circle back, you're going to get the obvious question now, is that what are the chances of a Once Blue reunion? I mean, even if it was just a one-off or like a few dates or something with to kind of coincide with this, what I think is a pretty monumental release,
Well, thanks, but I would say 0, because,
Crush me right out the gates, girl.
Yeah. No. You know what? There's a lot of love and appreciation. We have talked about it before.
Mm-hmm.
It's come up, it's been brought up, and, initially, Jesse just wasn't in that space. Jesse's gone on to do, other things. He's got other fish that he's been frying, and at this point, whereas I was more willing at one point, I'm just not there at this point. I'm so in love with the music we made, and I'm so happy to be able to present the real live performance, because there's nothing out there that represents it, and to find this one that we all remember and that we all cherished, I think is like a gift that we have that for ourselves and for our fans. But I'm just way beyond that at this point. I'm not interested in that music now. I'm interested in, I'm an advocate. I've been working to protect water supplies and air quality. I work for Riverkeeper, which is
I'm very familiar with that. Yeah.
Yeah. I work for Riverkeeper. I have my own beginning of a not-for-profit, but I've been protecting my community for a decade, 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm an advocate and a musician at this point, and I am clearing the decks to see what's next musically, and I really just want to move forward, and as Jesse does, as the guys do, I'm sure they would do it, but I'm just in a different place, and Jesse too, and I think that Once Blue served its purpose. It really has, and we're very, very fortunate to have started our lives our musical lives and in that way. So you wouldn't want to see it today. It's totally. You'd rather go see Jesse play his own original music today. It's beautiful, and he challenges himself the way I do still.
Right.
He's always got a different band that he's working with, and I'm not touring right now. I'm too busy. There's so many problems with the environment. I'm just really focused on that, and raising a son, which is my top priority, with my wonderful partner, husband, Larry Grenadier. We've also been married for 21 years.
Oh, like look at that. That's hilarious. That's great. Well,
yeah.
Well,
and my mom's with us, and my family is number one, and my work, which is both just advocacy and music. That's, I feel fulfilled, and hopefully my next offering will be something that you enjoy. And I hope to get down south again. I probably won't be touring for a number of years, but hopefully I'll get back out there one day.
Well, there's talks of us going to New York at some point, because I've never been to New York. So I will definitely have to come look you up and have some coffee or something.
Yes, you do. And please do. And there's no way that you can't keep me from music for too long. At some point, I'll get the itch and I'll have to get back out there. But for now, we've got all these recordings, and I got to make sure my boy gets everything he needs. So I don't know if you have children, but that really changed everything for me.
Oh, I bet. No, we have a 12-year-old cat and a 6-year-old dog. So those are our kids.
Well,
but
there you go,
they're our life too. It's so funny. It's like I'm doing an out of town show next week. I'm doing a solo show in Macon, and it was so funny because we were having to plan around when I could leave and how early I could leave and how long the dog can be alone, and so it's kind of
that's the deal. That's the deal. And with Charlie, who's our son, it's just been my best thing. It's been my greatest experience in life is having that boy. And it's such a privilege to be a parent and to take care of my mom. It's just, it's so meaningful. And
I love that, because I also love the fact that so many artists go back to that older time, reunite and put out music and
right,
tour.
Right, it's the hairdo. Let's call it the hairdo symptom.
It totally,
it's like not
it totally is the hairdo symptom. It's like, and the other thing too is that I think you kind of said something that was funny, because you said you wouldn't want to see Once Blue Now, because even though I would love to see Once Blue Now, sometimes I've seen some of my favorite bands from the past come back, and in my mind I go, wow, I kind of wish that my last vision of you or thought or sound of you would have been 20 something years ago, because right now it's not doing it for me, and there's always that risk of, like you said, it not being what it was, mainly because everybody grows and people change,
Well, and there's no shame in that. And I think that one of the big parts of growing and the work is being able to stand in your, in your center, in your piece. You're 2 feet on the ground, not leaning forward or leaning back, which is a funny analogy. But I really don't, if you're going to have a record that's going to have done well, and then want to continue to have a career after that, you're going to deal with some of that. You're going to deal with people having this impression of you from when you were, very few artists escape that. I don't know why Bonnie Raitt comes to mind, but she's someone who has. It doesn't matter. She's so present. She's great, right? No matter where she is and what she does, people have their favorite songs, but Bonnie Raitt doesn't have any problem just being present in her music. And then, but there's few people like that, I think. So you got to contend with some of that. And I think at the end of the day, you got to be comfortable with whatever you're doing, you know, and it doesn't, you're not, you know, it's hard for musicians to maybe have to accept that making music really is about, it's a teacher, right? That for some of us it's a teacher, that working a job is not the end of the world. And I come, when I teach, I work, you know, I meet a lot of students who are so confused. They're about to graduate. They've spent all of this money on a degree in performance of jazz, and they don't know what they're going to do. There's no teaching position. There's no, and they haven't developed their unique sound because they haven't been encouraged to do that. They've been scatting, or they've been doing, you know, chorus groups or whatever, but the school, for whatever reason, has not really developed a confidence to just help the student to hear who they are, no matter what. Who cares? If you're not going to be like whoever it is you have in your mind, you're not going to have a career like so and so. To try to emulate someone else and think that that's going to be your path is foolish. It's not. So you got nothing to lose but to otherwise find your sound and find the music that's authentic to you. Nothing to lose. You know, and when I get to work with students on that, it's so much better anyhow. But it's okay to you know, to do other things in life too. It doesn't mean your dream isn't coming true. It's like this American dream thing is so devastating, I think, to individual creativity. You've got this idea, talk about rigid, that music has to bring you, and this was my experience, that it had to do a certain thing for you. And if it didn't, then you failed, you know?
Oh, gosh. I mean, I tell people all the time, I said, I feel like, I started playing music when I was 12. I'm 44 now. I went through the whole, this is going to be my life phase. I'm going to make it. I'm going to do it, whatever. I feel like my musical life and my enjoyment of music truly started the day I said, I'm going to stop trying to make this a lucrative thing, and I'm just going to be myself and be an artist. And you know what?
Right.
I worked day jobs over the years. I did other things over the years, but I've made some of what I consider to be some of my best music and some of my favorite music by just being a musician, not having delusions of grandeur and not saying I'm going to be this and I'm going to be that. You know what I mean?
Well, I'll tell you what. I would never want to dash someone's dreams, and I'm not. What I'm trying to express is that what I think is really important is for people to find their unique sound and not to feel. We listen to things and for a long time there were certain musicians that I sounded like because I was so in love with them, and that was how I developed my sound, was by copying other things that I loved. Didn't get through that, finally, my way. And I think that when I do meet young people who have those kinds of dreams, I remember, and I'm always mindful of that, and I never want to crush those things. I think that's a disservice too, but I think supporting people to make music part of their lives instead of like a means to an end is a healthy tool. And I'm glad that, I can say to what you just said, I can also say is that, I make music at the highest level that I can, that I'm proud of, and I also have a great job that I love.
Right.
I love both of these things. It's not, I think we just have to see, and I have a family, and I'm a mom. It's like we can do a lot of different things in life, and save ourselves a lot of grief by
exactly
being flexible, and seeing, because the more authentic you are, you never know who knows who's going to, resonate with the public like that. That's not something you can plan out. It's not something you could ever know.
Right.
Be you.
Yeah, and just being yourself as a musician and making the music the best music that you possibly can. You don't have to, and I think you're right. I love that that's a lesson that can be handed down to people, is that, just because you're not out on the road and doing 100 shows a year or whatever, you're no less a musician, and you're no failure to it than anyone else. Make music on your own terms, and enjoy it.
And enjoy it. And that, and that's wisdom of the ages, and I love that, as I said at the beginning, drive is an important thing, and some people really have a strong one, and there's a reason for it, right? They're driven for a reason to do certain things in a certain way. So, but I have to admit, disdain this idea that the world is your oyster, and that the American dream is for everyone. These are just, to me, I hate them because it's I don't know. It really isn't that way for everyone. It depends on so many things, and I think we'd be so much better off if we just had simpler. We accepted our humanness in our communities and our families, and also we could be great at the things that we do. We don't have to have mansions and cars and all this crap to be happy with, our existence. And we grew up right in the heart of it, the 1980s. Jesus, it's just.
We did. I mean, we grew up in a time where we looked at I mean, I'm sure you did as well. Is that people our age measured success by looking at other artists and going, wow, look at how many cars they have, and look at the size of their house. Where now at my age, I go, who cleans that house? It's so big. Because I'm the house husband here, and I do the house cleaning and I do the laundry and stuff, and I'm like, shit, like I have enough going on with the house that I have.
God, I love that. And I'll tell you, being driven, there was nothing my parents could have done. I was going to New York, and I knew it very young, and and I think I was 16 when I knew it for sure, and I did it. But being encouraged to go, really left a mark on our communities. I mean, where I grew up now, there's no community left. I mean, people are gone, and what's left is really very hard. And, the community is being exploited by corporations, water companies. And when there's no one watching the house, this is what can happen. And so the transience of go and, follow your dreams, really, there's the dark side of that, too. So finding the balance, because it's really great to find your unique voice, and I am all for it, but within balance of the responsibility we have in the world too, to being good human beings. Really, we can't just think about ourselves. And especially at this point, we don't really have time anymore to do that. I don't think we have the resources to continue to do that. So it's a new challenge for humans, I think, young people who are artists, and I hope they all find wonderful mentors to help them through. So.
Well, Rebecca, you are definitely, without a doubt, one of them. I can totally tell, and I'm so glad you took time out of your busy schedule saving the world and forming me and like molding musicians to talk with me today. I really appreciate it.
Well, I'm very happy to, and I hope that today I find some new people to check out the Once Blue CD. I think it's, and to follow the path to where Jesse and I are today.
Well, thanks again so much for doing this, and the word will be spread, and best of luck with everything, and let's obviously keep in touch.
Thanks, Don.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate it, Rebecca.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thanks anyway, but if